All right. Howdy, I'm Dr. DeLeon. I'm a physical medicine rehabilitation specialist. I started my career as a combat medic, the Army, became an emergency medicine technician in New York City. Eventually went to med school. Was an EMT course director at Fort Campbell for several years. And I've been teaching medics, medical students, residents, primary care residents, nurse practitioners over the years. So, series of videos, starting out with some basic things. We're doing vital signs. I've already done pulse and respiration, and this one kind of combines the two with a tool. The pulse oximetry. So, the little pulse ox classically goes on your fingers. Sometimes in the hospitals they have ones that go on your earlobes, things like that. Little kids on their toes. All right. It gives us a sense of oxygenation and pulse rate. So it's a very useful tool. It's not perfect. Let's talk about what it is giving us. So the first question is, to get to understand, as we're trying to understand oxygen, is does oxygen dissolve in water? We're a water-based system. We inhale air with the oxygen. Why do we breathe? Get oxygen in, CO2 out. So we get oxygen in. Oxygen goes into our lungs, diffuses across the alveolar membrane, into the capillaries, gets absorbed into the bloodstream, and has to make it all the way down your water-based system, down to your toes. So it doesn't dissolve in the water of your bloodstream. Does O2 dissolve in water? So that's the first critical question. All right. From the respiratory lecture, we know carbon dioxide dissolves in water. All right. But does oxygen dissolve in water? And for our purposes, unlike fish, things like that, who are able to pull a little bit of oxygen out of the water, for us, the answer is no. Oxygen does not dissolve in water. So if it doesn't dissolve in water, it must be carried. What carries O2 in the blood? If it doesn't dissolve, it's got to be carried because it's got to get to your toes. So what carries it? Well, in this case, all right, we have a cell that's going to carry it. Among the three main blood cell types, red, white, and platelets, we're going to go with red blood cells. So, the next critical question is what in the red blood cells carries oxygen? All right? So, it's got to be carried by the red blood cells, doesn't dissolve in water. But the red blood cells is packing something, keeping it organized, so that in the red blood cells there's something that will actually carry it. It's not stuck to the membrane of the red blood cell, it's being carried by hemoglobin. All right, so that's a critical answer, hemoglobin. And what in hemoglobin carries oxygen? All right, so we're getting really into the weeds here. But what in hemoglobin? This is where you get why is Colorado named Colorado? It's because of the red soil. What in the red soil makes it red? What makes it a red blood cell? What does hemoglobin have that helps it carry oxygen? It has iron. All right? So these are critical questions, all right? And they're going to lead us to called the hemoglobin dissociation curve, which is how we then use pulse ox to determine how someone's doing. This is the critical thing to understand, is that somebody's got to carry the oxygen. And in this case, it's the iron and the hemoglobin and the red blood cells in the bloodstream that carry it. So, why is that critical to our understanding of oxygen delivery to the tissues? All right, so those are the critical questions. We go into problem with so that we know how to use the pulse oximetry in our evaluations. All right? So, hemoglobin is a globule, a protein globule. All right? And there are 4 hemoglobins stuck together. There's 2 alphas and 2 betas. Well, that's not coming out, so we'll get rid of green, and we'll go with blue. 2 betas. So there's 4 individual hemoglobin proteins that are stuck together as a 4 set, and in the middle of each one is your iron. And hemoglobin, that protein chain, holds the iron in such a way that under the right conditions, the iron is going to bind oxygen, and under the right conditions, it's going to let the oxygen go, unlike the rust on your car, where oxygen binds to the iron and it's a permanent binding. Hemoglobin holds the iron, so under the right conditions, it binds on, and under the right conditions, it binds off. All right? So each globule can hold 4 oxygens. So each of these is holding an oxygen. All right? The next globule can hold 4 oxygens. The next one can hold 4 oxygens. So each globule holds 4. Now, it can hold less than 4 if the conditions dictate, but it can't hold more than 4. So, the way to understand this is, in the military we think of privates. In civilian sector you think of 11-year-olds. They're equivalent. So, in the military I think, okay, I've got an LMTV, a large truck thing that carries troops and supplies around the battlefield, and in civilian you have a monster pickup truck. So the pickup truck is going to carry people, supplies, whatever, out to the back 40 so we can go camping. An 11-year-old scout with his pack and everything else, it's going to be hard for them, just like a private with their ruck and their weapon, all right, and their body armor, to climb up onto the back of that truck all by themselves. It's going to be very hard. But once one of them gets on the truck, now when the second private or the second child, 11-year-old, comes along, the first one reaches down and gives them a hand, helps them pull them up. So it's still kind of hard for that second person to get up, but it's not quite as hard as it was when one person was doing it by themselves. Then you get the third person to come along, all right? And the two people on the back reach down and they grab them and they help them up. So it gets kind of easy, all right? Now you've got 3 people on the back of a truck, and here comes the 4th person, and they reach down and basically chuck them on the back. It's very easy for that 4th person to get onto the back of the truck. Now you've got 4 privates on the back of a truck, or 4 children on the back of a truck with no adult supervision, no NCO supervision. And so what's going to happen? 4 privates in the back of a truck, or 4 kids? It's very easy for someone to fall off. Now you've got 3 on the back of a truck. goofing off, doing what kids do, doing what privates do. It's kind of easy for one to fall off. Then you've got two on the back of the truck. We're kind of like that thing, you know, monkeys jumping on the bed. Somebody's going to fall off, but it's kind of hard with two of them for one of them to fall off out of the two. But it happens. Then you got one on the back of the truck by themselves. Really hard for them to fall off all by themselves. So it's hard for the first one to get on, but once they get on, it tends to fill. And once it's full, you know, it does have a tendency for something to fall off, but it's kind of hard to empty completely. But if you imagine now, you're in the parking lot, you've got 10 trucks. So the 10 trucks can each hold 4, so that's 40 slots. But you've got 1,000 privates or 1,000 scouts or kids to go camping. Just by sheer randomness, the trucks are going to tend to fill. Then the trucks leave and they go out to the ranges, they go out to the campgrounds. And as the kids fall off, as the privates fall off, there's a sergeant, there's an adult that says, come here, pitch this tent, dig this hole, do this work. So as soon as they fall off, somebody puts them to work. And then that truck ends up delivering a bunch of privates or a bunch of kids out to the field. The truck comes back around to the parking lot. There's 1,000 privates, 1,000 kids there. They're going to tend to fill up again. Then as they drive around, back out to the field, and as kids randomly fall off, there's an adult, an NCO, ready to put them to work. So it's going to tend to deliver. So this system, you can imagine, the parking lot is the lungs, the field is the tissue, the roads are the bloodstream. So the system is designed where there's high concentration of oxygen, these things will tend to fill, and as they go downrange to the tissues, they're going to tend to deliver. All right? So that's how the system is designed. So we draw that on a curve, and this is a critical piece to understand how we use pulse oximetry. Now that we know there are these tendencies, as we draw we call it the hemoglobin dissociation curve. So here is O2 content, how much oxygen there is around these red blood cells, this hemoglobin, this iron. And here is percent fill. So I had 10 trucks, that means I could fit 40 people. I can't take 41. I can take 39, 38, but I can't take 41 because I only have 10 trucks. So there's a max capacity. And if I have 1,000, if I have 2,000, if I have 5,000, I can only get to 40. So there's a point at which you just kind of max out. So this is going to be 100%. This is 0%. This is 0 content. On into infinity. All right. So if I have no oxygen, I'm empty. But as I add oxygen, I'm really not doing much. You know, I've got 1 private, I've got 10 privates, I got 40, I got 10 trucks, I've got 10 privates. I'm still really, maybe 1 will get on. There comes a point where they start filling. And as they start filling, it rapidly starts filling as they start helping each other. And then, let me just put this line here at 100. So that's the ceiling. All right? And this curve is going to flatten. And no matter how far I get out on infinity, I'm pretty much full. All right? So, this has got a curve. And you'll notice here it is like a cliff effect. At some point, as I'm dropping oxygen, I'm starting to fall off. So if I say I'm going to drop from here to here, all right? I really don't make a difference. Same amount of change, all right? A little more than knuckles width. So I've gone from here to here, so minimal change. Minimal change. Same amount of change. A little more. Same distance. A little noticeable, but still I'm pretty good. Same change. Oh, well, that's a little more noticeable. All right. Same change. Whoa, that's very noticeable. Same change. I had fallen off the cliff. So there's a point where dropping oxygen content suddenly causes me to fall off the cliff. For somebody who has normal lungs, normal everything, life is good, you know, non-smoker, that kind of stuff, healthy person, this curve point is around 90%. All right? Normally they're living out here, 97 and above. Head coach, chest coach, maybe 95. But they get down here, 90%, we start dropping a little bit of content, suddenly they're falling off the curve. So someone who's a normal, healthy adult or normal, healthy child, we don't want to see their oxygen saturations around 91, 92%, 90%. That means their lungs are on verge of failing and they can fall off that cliff. Someone who's a long-term smoker, has had lung disease or something like that, all right, not reversible like asthma, because when they have an asthma attack, they're normal, all right? And when they have the asthma attack, their normal curve is going to fall off. But someone who has chronic disease, COPD, emphysema, you know, whatever, this whole curve kind of shifts and flattens. And that cliff portion may be, and they adapt to it, so they may be living where we're living, normal healthy person, 95 and above, they may be living at 91, 92. And their cliff is going to happen around 88, 85. But everybody's got a cliff. All right? So they may flatten out a little bit. All right? But this is the hemoglobin oxygen dissociation curve. All right? That's due to the fact that those hemoglobin globules help each other. All right? With loading and unloading. So therefore, that's how we use the pulse ox. You know, we're seeing where they are. And understand, for the pulse ox, basically what it's doing is, every time you pulse, that hemoglobin that's got the iron, that's got the oxygen with iron turns red, it makes the arterial blood redder. That's why when you draw venous blood, it's already delivered its oxygen, it's blue. But if you get arterial blood, it's going to be bright red. It sees that red wave and it measures that, and then it tells you, okay, this is how red it is. That redness is associated with this percentage. And every time I see the wave, I can count that so I can give you a pulse rate. All right, so that's how the pulse ox works. All right, but if you're going into shock and you're not perfusing your fingers that well, and there's not a lot of blood there, you're vasoconstricted, all right, it's not going to pick up a signal. If your fingers are cold, You're going to vasoconstrict. It's not going to pick up a signal. Certain types of nail polish can interfere with the signal. So there are some limitations on there. And then we get into one of the critical ways that pulse oximetry gives you a false reading. You can't trust it. There's a very critical condition, all right, where pulse ox does not help you. All right? And that is carbon monoxide. So that'd be question number 5. Classic physical exam. Physical exam. Finding with carbon monoxide. So carbon monoxide binds to the iron in hemoglobin with 1,000 times the desire to bind than regular oxygen. It is an adult, or an NCO for the military, who is in that parking lot and can leap up there on the back of the truck and just starts grabbing privates and throwing them on the back of the truck, grabbing little kids and saying, get up here, get up here. And as soon as they get up, they put the tailgate up, they put the tube strap across, they tell everybody to sit down, and nobody's going to play, so nobody's falling off the truck. So it's going to drive that filling very quickly, so the hemoglobin is going to get full. So you're going to get full saturation. But as that truck drives around the back 40, and normally privates and kids fall off, and you're delivering them to the field where they can do work, put up the tents, dig foxholes. Now they go by the back 40 and nobody falls off. Nobody falls off because that carbon monoxide's like an adult NCO saying, sit your butts down, nobody's moving, nobody's playing. So it comes back out of the back 40, back to the parking lot, still full. So the blood in your arterial system is all red, and the blood in your venous system, that normally is blue because you delivered all the oxygen, is red also. So the classic physical exam finding of someone who's got carbon monoxide poisoning is they are cherry red. That's the classic exam finding. And although their tissues are hypoxic because they're not getting oxygen delivered, the pulse ox is saying, you got plenty of oxygen. You're at 99% saturation. I don't know what your problem is. But they're not delivering the tissue. And the immediate treatment is, well, this person has a potential carbon monoxide poisoning. I know carbon monoxide binds to oxygen, meaning binds to hemoglobin with 1,000 times the affinity. All right, so how can I defeat that? Well, in the rare case that a carbon monoxide actually falls off, I want 1 billion privates or 1 billion scouts, kids, to get in the way and get on the truck. And then with the next exhalation, we blow the carbon monoxide away. We get rid of the adult. So someone like that, you're going to put on 100% O2, 100% non-rebreather, saturate the lungs with oxygen. You're not going to believe what the pulse ox is telling you because you've got the fact that they were potentially exposed, bad heater, whatever. They've got symptoms like headaches, lightheadedness, altered mental status. They're tachypneic, they're tachycardic because they're trying to get delivered and nothing's get delivered, and they're cherry red, and the carbon monoxide says, the pulse ox says, hey, you got plenty of oxygen, I don't know what your problem is. And you're going, wait, this sounds like carbon monoxide poisoning. I'm going to treat you with all the oxygen I have. I'm going to flood that parking lot, I'm going to flood those lungs to overcome that. All right? So Now we understand how pulse ox works, how oxygen gets around in the bloodstream, and how to interpret the pulse ox, how to apply it clinically, and the one of the deceivers is carbon monoxide poisoning. So we reviewed, does oxygen dissolve in water? No, it gets carried by the red blood cells, by the hemoglobin red blood cells, by the iron in the hemoglobin in the red blood cells. And it does it in a cooperative manner such that it creates an oxygen dissociation curve, and it's kind of S-shaped. And that cliff where it starts dropping off is around 90% in normal healthy people. But that curve can shift and flatten in someone who's got underlying lung disease. Their body adapts to that low oxygen, and so their natural baseline oxygen might only be 92, 93, and that cliff happens more in the 80s, all right? And that the confounder is carbon monoxide poisoning can give you a false reading. That's a classic thing with the classic cherry red. So hopefully this helps you understand and how to use that in your vital sign assessment. All right, and we'll continue to put out these videos, and hopefully you like them, and you click that subscribe button, and I'll keep putting them out so you become aware of them, and we help you in your educational pursuits. All right, Dr. De Leon out here.